My parents embarrassed me in front of everyone at my brother's flawless wedding when they said, "It's such a pity you haven't found someone at your age." I didn't argue, I simply locked eyes with them and finished my drink. The next morning, their family group chat erupted into chaos after they discovered photos of the secret beach wedding they hadn't been invited to. Right after my brother kissed his bride, my dad leaned in, raised his glass, and said loud enough for half the room to hear, "Too bad you're still single at 36. My mom nodded in agreement beside him, and everyone laughed. I didn't join in, I just took a slow sip of champagne and held their gaze, as if I had been waiting for this moment. The ballroom was over-decorated, like someone had walked into a Pinterest board titled Rustic Elegance and said, "Give me everything." Flowers dangled from the chandeliers, mason jars with personalized tags adorned each table, and string lights crisscrossed the ceiling like a web of expectations. It was beautiful in that overproduced way that screamed, "Look how perfect we are," rather than actually being perfect. I stood by the open bar, half watching, half bored, as Sarah and her new husband took the stage. People clapped like trained seals, mooing and awing as they kissed again for the cameras. I knew it was a big deal for her. She had landed the man our parents called the ideal, which was code for tall, fit, polite, and from a family with a yacht. That night, she looked like the center of the universe with her dazzling smile and her form-fitting dress, while I stood there in a deep navy suit I had chosen carefully, elegant but not too loud, just enough to look like I cared without screaming desperation. Then my parents made their move. They leaned in, smug and composed, holding their flutes of overpriced champagne with those perfectly manicured nails my mom had maintained every other week since the early 2000s. "Too bad you're still single at 36, my dad said, letting it ring out like a church bell on a Sunday morning. It was loud enough that even the DJ paused mid-song. The people around us, cousins, old neighbors, one of Sarah's college friends I barely knew, chuckled. Some tried to hide it behind their glasses, others didn't bother. It was open season on my dignity. I didn't flinch, I just took a long, deliberate sip of champagne, tilted my head, and looked at them like they were something sticky I had stepped in. That sip was for every birthday party they skipped, every girlfriend they criticized until I ended things, every moment they made me feel like being unmarried was a disease that needed curing. You learn a lot about people when they humiliate you in public with smiles plastered on their faces. This wasn't the first time they had thrown a jab, no, this was just the loudest one. My parents were never violent, never even raised their voices much, but their weapons were colder than fists, sarcasm wrapped in concern, judgment baked into compliments, little just saying bombs they dropped at the dinner table. "When I got promoted at 30, they said, at least your job's going well, that's something. When I bought my own house, they asked, all by yourself? Isn't that lonely? And when I told them I didn't want kids, they stared at me like I had just confessed to a crime. So their little performance tonight was honestly predictable. Sarah, of course, didn't hear a thing. She was too busy basking in applause, dancing her first dance to some romantic ballad while my parents played their part as the elegant patriarchs in tailored suits and floor-length dresses with just the right amount of sequins. Those two knew how to play a crowd, and they had been doing it since I was a teenager. I wandered outside for some fresh air, letting the cold bite at my skin, knowing I would have to go back in eventually and smile through another round of family gossip and forced conversations. But standing there, listening to the muffled music and fake laughter through the glass doors, I felt something else bubbling under the surface, not sadness, not exactly anger, but something sharper, cleaner, like clarity. I wasn't mad they said it, I was mad they still thought it would work. There's something amusing about how people believe they've got you figured out, they stop asking questions, they stop listening, they lock you in a little box labeled, still single, still figuring it out, still not enough, and forget that people evolve when no one's looking. That silence I gave them after their jab wasn't defeat, it was strategy. Because here's the thing, they had no idea. They didn't know what I had been planning for weeks. They didn't know what had already happened 2 weeks ago. Every girlfriend before Emma had gone through the meat grinder of my parents' opinions. They dissected their careers, their families, their shoes. One girl had a tattoo, and they asked if she'd ever been to jail. Another rode a motorcycle, and they said they wouldn't be surprised if she did drugs on weekends. By the time I hit 30, I stopped introducing anyone. What was the point? It always ended the same, with me explaining, defending, or apologizing. So Emma remained my secret rebellion. We lived together for 4 years before we got engaged, and not a single person in my family even knew we shared a lease. Every Christmas, I would fly solo, telling them I was too busy to bring anyone, then come home to Emma and our quiet life filled with homemade pasta and sarcastic movie nights. It was simple, it was ours. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to perform. But something shifted last fall. We had been talking about marriage in this roundabout way for a while, but then one night over takeout and bad TV, she pulled out a ring. Nothing flashy, just a gold band with a tiny opal, my birthstone, the one I had once told her I loved when we were tipsy and wandering through a flea market. She remembered, and I said yes without a second thought. We didn't plan a wedding, we planned an escape. We flew to the coast 2 weeks before Sarah's big day, rented a little house with peeling shutters and a wild backyard, and got married barefoot under an arch made of driftwood and white cloth. It was quiet, it was messy, it was absolutely perfect. I didn't tell anyone, not a soul, not Sarah, not my parents, not even my best friend from high school, who I still text once a month as if we were pretending to stay in touch. It wasn't out of malice, it was protection. It was choosing peace over performance. I wasn't going to let anyone shrink my joy to fit their comfort zone. That night, after the wedding reception, I returned to my apartment, kicked off my dress shoes, and opened my phone. The group chats were still buzzing with Marie's wedding photos, sparkler exits, and forced smiles filling every thread. And then I did it. I posted one photo, me in my wedding suit, laughing with my head tilted back, Emma holding my waist like she always does when I'm overthinking, the ocean behind us. No caption, just one photo. I didn't post it publicly, I put it on my close friends list, maybe 10 people total. But one of them, bless her messy little soul, screenshotted it and sent it straight to my parents. I saw the message come through within the hour, and I just sat there, wine in one hand, phone in the other, and smiled like the quiet villain I had been all along. The sun was just starting to bleed into the sky when I woke up on the day I married Emma. I remember how it felt like the air itself had paused, like the world was holding its breath while I made the most honest decision of my life. There were no dress rehearsals, no floral consultations, no $1,000 deposits hanging over my head, no high school cousin complaining about travel arrangements, just the ocean outside the window, Emma's steady breathing beside me, and the sound of waves pulling secrets in and out of the shoreline. I had never felt calmer, not even close. We were in a little house on the edge of a beach town, 2 hours from the city, the kind of place where the porch creaked every time you stepped on it and the coffee pot took 10 whole minutes to heat. I picked my suit months earlier, soft linen, no stiff collars, no cummerbund. I didn't want anyone adjusting me or pulling me tighter or whispering how I should pose for the camera. I wanted to feel like myself, not a version curated for a social media album or my parents' approval. Emma wore a simple white dress, flowing at the ankle, like we were playing at being casual but still wanted to look nice in the photos. Our friend Sasha officiated. She's the one person I trust enough to hold my truths without squeezing them into something smaller or more digestible. There were no guests, no ring bearers, no caterers, no one crying dramatically in the third row. It was just us, the sound of the tide, and a handful of seagulls who couldn't have cared less what we were doing. I held her hands and promised the things that actually mattered, that I wouldn't run when things got quiet, that I'd stop assuming silence meant anger, that I'd laugh when she forgot where she parked and not take it personally. She promised me weird coffee dates, messy honesty, and that she'd never, under any circumstances, ask me to go camping. We kissed, we laughed, we ate gas station sandwiches, voicemail, just the silence of expectation. Then it rang again and again after that, and my phone practically vibrated off the counter from all the alerts piling on top of one another like a digital avalanche of opinions, guilt trips, and pure, uncut parental panic. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I opened my laptop, poured myself another cup of strong black coffee, the kind that could burn through steel if you left it sitting too long, and started scrolling through the screenshots that Sasha had already begun sending me, one after the other, like she was documenting a slow-motion explosion in real time. The group chat was a circus. Aunt Linda, in her usual passive-aggressive Christian warrior tone, had dropped a Bible verse within minutes of the wedding photo surfacing, something about obedience and honor. It wasn't clear if she was implying I should have honored my parents by inviting them or if my marriage itself was somehow an act of defiance against God. Knowing Linda, probably both. Then came the questions, not the curious, supportive kind, but the nosy, dramatic, ego-bruised kind. Why would he keep this from us? Did he elope with a stranger? Is she even Christian? Is she pregnant? I swear that one came from Cousin Marianne, and I could practically hear her gleeful little gasp from 2 states away. The assumptions started rolling faster than the facts ever could. No one asked if I was happy. No one asked what the ceremony was like or what I wore or what kind of vows we said. No one cared about us, they only cared about themselves, how they looked, how they felt, how my silence made them feel small. And that was the point. It was never about revenge, not really, though I'd be lying if I said the chaos didn't give me a twisted sort of peace. The truth is, it was about control. After decades of having my story shaped, filtered, judged, and sometimes erased entirely by people who believed they had the right to narrate my life, I finally took the pen back. I didn't want their approval, I didn't want their applause. I wanted to do something big without asking anyone's permission. More importantly, I wanted to experience that moment without the noise of other people's needs ringing in my ears. For the first time, I did not perform for anyone. That might not sound like much to someone who grew up in a normal household, whatever the hell that means, but for me, it was revolutionary. I'd spent my entire adult life contorting myself into versions of what people needed: a good son, a polite nephew, an accomplished professional who never made waves. Even in moments that should have been mine, graduations, promotions, birthdays, someone else always managed to make it about them, usually my parents, especially them. When I was 21 and got accepted into a writing program, they told people at church I was taking a little creative break from real work. When I broke up with a girlfriend who made me feel invisible, they said I was being too sensitive and that relationships take compromise. When I finally bought my own house, they said, well, I guess some men don't need women after all, as if being independent was a consolation prize instead of a damn achievement. Every win I had was minimized, twisted, reframed to fit inside a narrative they had already decided was true, that I was difficult, dramatic, and ultimately tragically alone. So no, they didn't know I was in love. They didn't know I had been living with Emma for years. They didn't know we cooked dinner together 4 nights a week, or that she read my writing out loud just to make me laugh, or that she always made me tea when I was sad and knew how I took it without asking. They didn't know I got married on a Tuesday, barefoot on the sand, saying vows I wrote myself, holding hands with the one person who saw every jagged edge and never once asked me to be less sharp. And that was by design. Because just being close to someone doesn't mean they know you. Just because someone shares your blood, your name, your face doesn't mean they're entitled to your heart. My parents never really asked who I was, not in the ways that count. They asked about jobs, rent, credit scores, whether I'd met anyone serious, and whether my hair looked more professional now that I was older. But they never asked what I feared, what I loved, what I needed to feel safe. And when someone never asks, you stop offering. I let the phone ring again. I watched it buzz across the table like some desperate little bug trying to get my attention. Then it stopped. A voicemail popped up. I didn't listen to it, not right away. I poured more coffee, sat on the floor with my legs crossed like a kid, scrolling through more chaos while Emma quietly made eggs in the background like it was any other Thursday morning. We sat in silence for a while after that, watching the light shift across the floor as the bartender wiped down glasses with the kind of slow focus reserved for people who've seen too many things they can't talk about. When the check came, Marie paid without a word, like she was still playing big sister even when she didn't know the rules anymore. Outside, the air smelled like asphalt and summer and regret, and as we stood on the curb, neither of us knowing what to say next, she reached out like she might hug me but didn't. I didn't move forward either, some distances you just let be. I'll tell them you're okay, she said finally, and I nodded. Tell them whatever makes them sleep at night, I replied. Then I turned and walked away, not quickly, not dramatically, but with the kind of steady certainty you only get when you stop apologizing for the life you built without an audience. I didn't get the applause, but I got the peace, and somehow that felt louder. 3 months passed. Fall arrived with its crisp mornings and early sunsets. Emma and I settled into our married life, our small apartment filled with books and coffee mugs, and our photography equipment scattered across the dining table we rarely used for actual dining. The calls from my parents had stopped after 6 weeks. Marie texted occasionally, superficial messages about the weather or some TV show she thought I might like, a ceasefire, not a resolution. Then a plain white envelope arrived in our mailbox. No return address, just my name written in my dad's unmistakable block letters. Inside was a check, the exact amount they'd spent on Marie's wedding, and a single note card with 3 words, "For your future." I stared at it for a long time, sitting on our fire escape while Emma showered, the sounds of the city rising up around me. It would have been easy to tear it up, to reject this hollow attempt at reconciliation, money instead of apology, transaction instead of understanding. Part of me wanted to, the part that still burned with the memory of every dismissive comment, every comparison, every public humiliation. But I didn't. I folded the check and put it in my wallet. That Sunday, Emma and I drove to my parents' house. I hadn't told them we were coming. When my dad opened the door, he looked older than I remembered, the lines around his eyes deeper, his shoulders slightly stooped. My mom appeared behind him, her face carefully composed but her hands trembling. "We brought lunch," Emma said, holding up the bags from the deli down the street from our apartment. "Simple food, nothing fancy, the kind of meal you share with family on an ordinary day." We ate in the kitchen, not the formal dining room where my parents usually insisted on hosting. The conversation was awkward, stilted, full of long pauses and careful navigation around the elephant in the room. My mom asked Emma about her photography, my dad asked about our apartment. We showed them a few photos from the beach wedding, and my mom touched the corner of one picture, her finger lingering on my smiling face. "You look happy," she said quietly, not a question this time. "I am," I answered, looking directly at her. "I have been for a long time." Emma reached under the table and squeezed my hand. My dad cleared his throat, staring into his coffee cup like it contained answers to questions he hadn't figured out how to ask. "We got your check," I said finally. "Thank you, but we don't need it." My dad's head snapped up. "It's yours. We want you to have it." "I know, but we're good, really." I pulled the check from my wallet and placed it on the table between us. "What we need isn't money." My mom's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. For once, she didn't hide behind composure or deflection. "What can we do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It was the first honest question she'd asked me in years, maybe ever. "You can get to know my wife," I said. "You can stop comparing me to Marie. You can accept that my life looks different from what you imagined, but it's still good. It's still worth celebrating." No one promised anything that day, there were no dramatic declarations or tearful embraces. We finished lunch, talked about neutral topics, and left with tentative plans to meet again in 2 weeks. As we drove away, Emma asked if I was okay. "I don't know," I answered truthfully, "but I think we might be eventually." Reconciliation, I was learning, wasn't a single moment but a long series of small choices, choosing to show up, choosing to speak honestly, choosing to maintain boundaries while leaving the door unlocked. It was messier than arrangement, more complicated than forgiveness.